Today, I'm going to answer the most common questions that I receive in my comments section from you guys. So we're going to cover questions about my machine, the wadding and backing that I use and thread, and questions about this heirloom quilt. My name is Rachel and this is Rachael Quilts. The number one question I get is, what machine do I have? So this is a Janome Memory Craft 6600. I actually bought this the year my son was born and he's now 15. It did come with this additional table, which I use all the time. It has plenty of stitches, so all the decorative stitches here. But I believe the foot that I use the most for quilting, the walking foot, let me just get that out. This walking foot here, I believe I purchased that separately because I knew I needed that for quilting my layers together. Another question you are always asking me is, what is the throat size? Because yes, this is has a larger throat size than a regular sewing machine because it is made for quilting in mind. So I'll just measure that for you. So this is my ruler in inches. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Just shy of 9 inches to my needle from the edge. This gives me a lot more room to quilt because I do quilt queen and king size quilts on this machine. So yes, a larger throat size, and that definitely helps when you're quilting at home. Another question that I always get asked is, what thread do I use? And my original answer would be, just off the top of my head, I would say, I use a cotton thread. However, this conversation came up in our school community online that we have, and I actually went and had a look at the threads that I use. I use these Gutermann threads, these ones here, because they sell them at Spotlight, which is our main chain store for fabric and sewing items here in Australia. So I always just buy these Gutermann, and I had just thought, oh yeah, they're cotton. But when I have a look, they're actually 100% polyester. So the answer to that question is, I actually piece a lot of my quilts, well, all my quilts, with this Gutermann thread. So I piece with polyester. Now, when I'm quilting though, I got given these beautiful variegated threads in all different colors, and they have these pink tubes that they're on. And this is Wonderfill. They're Egyptian cotton. So when I am quilting my quilts, the 3 layers together, I'm using this thread, and that's a cotton. So I use a combination of polyester and cotton for my quilts, and usually I don't pay attention. Like, obviously I didn't pay attention to what the thread was made out of. I really just pick the colors. I'm not that picky about the threads, obviously. So that's the answer to that question. Another question that is always asked is what batting I use, and that's, I think, because my quilts are very fine, thin, and they have a lovely flow and drape to them. So often people want to know what I use, and I again buy my batting at Spotlight. I buy it on sale in big bolts. So I buy enough for 3 or 4 quilts in one go in a big bolt. I actually need to buy one now. So Spotlight, if you could have a sale, that would be great. It is a cotton. So this is how flowy and drapey it is. Nice and thin. So it is a Legacy brand, and it is made in the USA. Legacy natural cotton wadding, needle punched with stabilizing scrim for added support. So I get the whole bolt, which is 90 inches by 9 yards. Yeah, I just love this batting so much because it does keep my quilts nice and lightweight, breathable, and flowy, which is how I like my quilts, because we use them on the beds and we sleep under them, and so it's perfect for here in Australia. If you needed a heavier quilt though, I imagine that maybe a wool, like for warmth, wool might be better. And then also, if you're hanging them as a display quilt, you might want something thicker or stiffer as well, if it's like for a display or a exhibition. But because mine really are just for use, I find this is perfect for us. So that's what batting I use. Now let's talk about the backing of these quilts. I made a video last year about how I often use secondhand sheets. So a question that I received a lot over the year as people watch that video was like, how do I find sheets that are suitable and what kind of sheets are suitable? I go to secondhand shops and I go to the sheet section and I'm looking for sheets in really good condition. Obviously, I don't want worn out sheets or sheets that have stains or that look like someone else has been sleeping with them. So I try to get very good quality and near new sheets, which you can find from time to time. I'm looking for cotton, always cotton fabrics. So here is one as an example. It's not the most exciting color, but I did find this one at our St. Vincent de Paul secondhand shop. So this one is called the world's softest cotton sheet. So it is 100% cotton, and I usually just go by the feel as well. So I look for if it's cotton, I look for if it's in good nick, but then I'm also just feeling if I think it feels soft. Sometimes thread count is on the label and sometimes it's not, but a higher thread count is actually means that the fabric feels softer, but maybe that the threads are too close together and it's hard for your needle to get through. So contrary to sort of what you might think, that a higher thread count is going to be a better sheet for the backing, for quilting, it's kind of not, you don't necessarily want it to have the highest thread count ever. So just go by what it feels like, do a bit of a pull and stretch and see if it's got no stretch in it. Now when I go to op shops and I'm looking, because I often go to look for clothes, this jumper, do you like? Op shop, $5. I'm also looking for sheets, even if I don't have a quilt in mind. So I just buy them, wash them, and fold them up and put them in my stash ready so that when I do need backing for quilts, I've got a few different options. So this is the last one of my stash at the moment. So I do need to go out and have a good old look and try and find some more sheets to add to my collection. This quilt has received a lot of love within my family and also love from the internet. This was the star of a viral video that I made and you guys just loved this quilt and I had so many questions about it. Especially the number one question was, what is this pattern? Okay, and because you want to make your own, and I don't blame you. This quilt, let me tell you the story of this quilt first, in case you haven't heard. There's also a newsletter to go along with this story. So if you want more info and photos, I'll leave the link down in the description. You can go and read that newsletter post. First of all, I bought the fabric in Southeast Asia, and it is the trip that I was backpacking as a young adult. I was 24 years old, and I bought all this fabric, a lot of it in Vietnam, and it was the trip that I met a boy that would become my husband. So then we were together and we were living together, and I was making this quilt for our very first bed. So it is very sentimental to me. So it is now, I guess, going by my age, 20 years, just over 20 years old. The pattern, dum 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 dum, here it is. This is a disappearing 9-patch. So it's actually quite simple to make. When I was making it though, I didn't go the simple route. When I was making this, I was working from a pattern that I found in a magazine, and I actually cut out the individual squares, little squares, rectangles, and the bigger squares. I remember doing this and putting them together. However, since posting this quilt out into the internet, there has been people that have said, no, this is a disappearing 9-patch. And when I heard that and I looked at it, I was like, of course it is. I could have made this so much easier than I did. So I'm actually going to give you a bit of a rundown of how I make that, how you'd make a disappearing 9-patch, because it is as simple as making a regular 9-patch, slicing it down the center each way, and spinning the blocks. Wow, I should have done that. Anyway, this quilt, I've now decided it's time to retire this quilt. My daughter had it on her bed because it's either on my bed or my daughter steals it because she loves it. We have also used it over the years, like as a picnic blanket. Like we haven't been precious about this quilt. However, now I think it's time to start being precious about it. I went into my daughter's room and I noticed that I was looking at the quilt and I knew that the binding was starting to wear down. The first layer, this is why it's great if your binding's a double layer, because that first layer has worn away and it's lots of holes all the way along it. And I knew that was happening, but when I went in the other day, I noticed that some of the front of the quilt was wearing. There's holes actually in the quilt on the fabric at the front, and it is really wearing. So I think it's time to retire this quilt and for it to now become a family heirloom that is not really used day to day, because I don't know how many times through the washing machine this quilt will last. And I want this quilt to last forever because it is really special to us. I'm pretty sure I have a 9 patch in my sewing stash, like that's a leftover block. I'll go grab that and I'll explain how you make a disappearing 9 patch, and then you can make this quilt yourself. I have said I would love to make a pattern or a video showing you how to make this quilt. I've even gone and bought more fabric, but life is busy and I haven't got around to that yet. So this will provide you with some indication of how you can make this while you wait for me to get my act together. Okay, so you have a regular 9 patch, but I believe this one was 2.5-inch squares put together in the 9. Then what you do is you find the center and slice through. So we've got, this is 2 inches, so I need to go in 1 inch into the middle and just put one slice through that way. Line up the middle on this side. And then you swap out these 2 blocks and turn them around. And that is basically the pattern. Now what you can do if you like, these are all going to be the same color. However, what you could do if you've got plenty, like make more than one at the same time, and then you can change out the blocks so that they are a little bit more randomized, which is what I would do if I were making it. So I'll give you another hot tip though. As you can see in this quilt, I chose this red and pink to be these small squares. So in our block, the small square ends up being the one that was in the center. So if we put that back together, the small square is the center block of your 9 patch. So when making your 9 patches, put the color you want to be your accent or highlight in the center of your 9 patch. So for me, it was the dark red and the pink, which the pink was darker. It has faded quite a bit, so it doesn't stand out as much. And then the rest of the blocks, I think the lighter squares are my biggest. The lighter fabrics are my bigger fabric, so they would be the ones on the corners of your 9 patch. I'll just make it again. All right, the big squares end up being on the corner of your 9 patch. So if you want your big squares to be the lighter fabric, put your lighter fabric on the outside, your highlight in the middle, and then your mediums on the center of each side. And that for me was like these brown fabrics and light pink. And the very last question I'm going to answer in this video is about this table. So many of you want to know, how did I get such a beautiful table? And it is gorgeous, isn't it? It is an antique door. So my husband and I found it in an antique shop very early on, like 15, 20 years ago. And my husband is a builder, and we thought that would make it a fantastic door on a future build. Let's buy it. So we did. And in the meantime, we had it hung up on our wall. It is quite heavy, but my husband worked out how to put it horizontally on the wall of one of our houses we were living in. So it was a wall hanging for a few years. Then we moved house, and it got put in the garage for over 10 years. We moved to this townhouse, and we needed a new table that was long enough, and we thought, let's use that door. So my husband just called up, and we got this glass made to measure. So he just gave them the measurements of the door, and they made this glass top for it. And then online he bought black steel legs and just screwed them onto the top. So we created this table ourselves. Well, my husband did. So it's fantastic because it is nice and large, and it's obviously got beautiful detail into it. And we can sit, the four of us, really comfortably, but sometimes when we have people over, we can sit up to maybe 8 around this table. So it works really well for us. I'm sure you've got more questions. You always do, and I love that. Keep the conversation going in the comment section. I love to chat to you all there, and we'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.